The Indianapolis Colts were once on top of the world, sitting at 7-2, making an all-in move for Sauce Gardner. Where did it all go wrong for this team? Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident film nerd of HorseshoeHuddle.com. Welcome to Locked On Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. As you guys can tell, if you're here on YouTube, Jake Arthur is still out this week. We're not making him come back too soon because he just had his baby yesterday. Him and his wife gave birth to a beautiful baby boy, Benny Arthur. We are giving a big shout out and all the love to the Arthurs here, and we're telling Jake to stay away as long as possible to spend that paternal leave with them. But joining today is Derek Schultz, and of course, Derek Schultz of Colts Squad Show fame, I guess is what I need to say, Derek, right? Like that's what they all know you for. But if you guys have been following Colts coverage for your entire life, you know Derek. He has been covering this team forever, doing a lot of great stuff covering this squad. And he's obviously the perfect person to have on here to talk about what the heck happened this season. Like, I don't even want to say this is a lost season yet because they're still technically in the playoff hunt, and they just made this win now move at quarterback to see what could happen. But maybe it goes from a season that we're expecting great things to now a season where it's a comedy of errors, and it's kind of in line with the rest of the Chris Ballard tenure. So we're going to talk about how we got here with just the injuries that have hit this team so hard this season, from star players to what we thought were going to be key young players. We're going to talk about just the major vibe shift. And again, it doesn't even have to be like a negative vibe shift, just a funny, goofy vibe shift at this point with the team. And then we're going to close it out by talking about, are the Colts just cursed at this point, Derek? Like that, I think that's a great way to close out this show. But let's kick it off with the injuries. And we know the quarterback room, so we'll talk about that in a second. But the biggest one I think we need to discuss is Mooney Ward. The star free agent addition, the biggest contract that Chris Ballard has ever given out to an outside free agent, coming in here to be that #1, like bona fide corner, perfect fit on paper, bring that energy, that winning pedigree, all pro player. And it started off so well this year. Like that first week, he looked so good, suffered the concussion after that game. And when he got back on the field, looked like that #1 corner. But then the fluky pregame incident against the Arizona Cardinals led to a second concussion, landed him on IR, and now he is suffering a third concussion. I don't know if it's a new one or just symptoms from that second concussion, but he was placed on IR yet again. And unless the Colts make some crazy run of the playoffs, even if they do, I don't think you would activate him at this point. It appears that his season is done and his career feels like it's in jeopardy. So, I mean, if we're talking injuries, that's the biggest one we have to discuss first.
Yeah, and especially because of the serious nature of it, like you said, like this isn't a guy that, tweaked a hamstring and then he had an ankle problem and then he had turf toe or something. You know what I mean? Not that those aren't lingering issues. They can be, but it's not a brain injury. It's not something where you would have the quote like you had from Mooney after the second one where he said, "Hey, I started contemplating whether I want to even do this again." Like that's serious, for these guys. I mean, you talk to these players, Zach, this is their everything. It's very hard to get even guys that are clearly cooked to walk away and to retire because of how much pride they take in this and how obsessed they are with it. So that I think really underlines the seriousness of the whole thing. But you're right that it's just you wanted Chris Ballard to really go out there and spend and be aggressive, and he was. And when Ward was on the field and healthy, you saw the impact that he could make. And I think that's what's so frustrating about this is that the injuries are what got in the way. It wasn't poor performance. It was injuries. And even if you look and you say, well, he didn't play that well, the last couple of weeks. Okay, fine. But that very well could be after effects from having 2 concussions in 6 weeks. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's a big blow because, having Sauce Gardner and Charvarius Ward on opposite ends with a healthy DeForest Buckner, who I know we're going to talk about in the middle of that defense, you can imagine what that thing would look like for Colts fans, and to be teased by that and to not have that and to to not even have 1/3 of that, to have 0/3 of that is extremely, extremely frustrating.
Yeah, and you link it perfectly here where it's not like it was just Mooney Ward who's been out, right? The big addition, Sauce Gardner, they trade 2 first-round picks for him. They get 2 games out of him. He looks pretty good in those 2 games, especially good against the Falcons. Chiefs game, I thought he was one of their better players on defense. Gets hurt early against Houston. Still not practicing as of right now, missed this past game. We don't know how much longer he's going to be out with that calf injury. And look, this is Indianapolis. We don't mess with calf injuries in this city. So another player in the DeForest Buckner. I mean, obviously, since 2020, he's been the most valuable defensive player for this organization, and we've seen the ramifications of not having him. Where has the pass rush been with DeForest Buckner on the shelf? He did limited practice today. We don't have the full injury report by the time recording this, but he did get back on the field. But I mean, when you're missing a month of games from DeForest Buckner, when you're potentially going to miss a month of games from Sauce Gardner, plus you lump in the Mooney Ward injuries, I mean, this isn't baseball. This isn't hockey. You don't have some star prospect that can come up here and potentially step in and solve everything. Like in the NFL, you have your 53 players and that's it. You can't replace the value of those 3 players in-house during the season, and it plays a factor on Sundays.
Yeah, I was having this discussion. This was a couple of weeks ago with a friend, like most valuable Colts, and I've always felt I'm just a huge DeForest Buckner homer. But I've always felt like he really is, especially as quarterback has been such in flux, he's their most important player. And my buddy gets into me and he's like, what are you talking about? It's Jonathan Taylor. I mean, come on, look at the numbers and all that. And look, obviously you can make an argument that Jonathan Taylor is also super valuable to what they do. But I just think the impact that Buckner has and the tentacles of what his play reaches, it far it exceeds anybody else that's on the entire roster. Like, I think Jonathan Taylor is great in a vacuum for the most part. I don't know if that always translates into helping other areas, like you mentioned with Buckner and this pass rush that the Colts just can't seem to figure out, even though they keep throwing draft capital at it, and trying to make that work. So I think the Buckner loss, given the timing of it too, has been huge. We all knew that this was going to be a really big stretch. And now, you look at it and the Colts have lost 3 straight and they've lost 4 of 5. And really, Zach, they're lucky to have won 1. Honestly. Yeah. I mean, that Atlanta game, they very easily could have lost. They needed a last minute drive to make, and a couple of great throws from Daniel Jones and then Jonathan Taylor playing Superman to make that thing happen there. I mean, that very easily could have been 0-5. And yeah, you can go back to the Kansas City game and say, well, they could have won that, or they could have won. That kind of cuts both ways. But for the Buckner injury to happen at any point in the season would be detrimental. But I think especially when it happened was specifically a really crushing blow. And that's one that I was bracing for impact when it happened. And now here it is. And obviously it's made a huge impact.
Yeah, and we're talking defense here. The defense losing their top 3 most impactful players for significant time this season, and that's certainly weighed on that side of the ball. The offense has been mostly healthy this season outside of one position, and that one position is the most valuable position, not only in football, but in like all of sports. It's the position that determines wins and losses more than anything else, and that is quarterback. Daniel Jones going down with the Achilles injury. Even before that, he was dealing with a fractured fibula in his left leg, goes down with the Achilles injury in his right leg. Anthony Richardson would have been the next guy up. He's out with another fluky injury that happened earlier this season. And then Riley Leonard gets out there, the rookie 6th-round pick. He's dealing with a PCL injury in his leg. He did practice today, but still, I mean, him limited at all is a huge thing. So, I mean, look, you could probably survive some injuries, like even injuries to star players, but injuries to your top 3 quarterbacks. Yeah. I mean, no question, no reason. Like, of course they're going to bring in Phillip Rivers, right? Like, there's nothing else you can do when you have that many injuries at quarterback.
Yeah, Zach, and we talked about this. I remember the day that it was announced that it was going to be Daniel Jones. I think we did like a bet on if we're going to see Anthony Richardson again. And I think you're the one that said, well, yeah, we're going to see him because Jones misses games in every season that he's played, right? So, of course, we're going to – and now here's a prime opportunity. What a redemption story it would be for Daniel Jones to go down with Achilles, and there's Anthony Richardson waiting in the wings, and here's an 8-5 football team that still has everything in front of them. And, I'm not saying that I was super confident that he would come in and save the day, but it would have been great to see. And instead, an exercise band almost knocks his eyeball out of the socket. You know what I mean? Like, you can't even make this stuff up. Like, the injuries that happen here are, the two most devastating, and Achilles, and then that exercise band thing makes me nauseous just thinking about it.
Yeah.
How serious that was. I don't even need to make light of it. I mean, it was a very, very, I don't think people realize how serious of an injury that it was at the time. And then with Leonard, he's a third string quarterback for a reason. I don't think that he has an NFL arm, but even then you can't even roll the dice with him because of this leg issue that he has too. So it's just, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. I don't think I've ever seen a team's be down its three top quarterbacks. And we certainly have never seen a team call a guy that's been away from football for 5 years and said, hey, you want to come back and play? It's interesting to see how it'll play out, right? I don't think, I'm kind of in the camp of sure, why not? Because what else are you going to do? Once you lose your first three quarterbacks, it's kind of like throw your hands up in the air. Yeah, like give me the most outlandish solution that you can think of, and sure, let's throw a bunch of stuff to the wall and see if anything sticks. But it is a bummer. Not only that, but Jones being limited by the fibula injury, which clearly bothered him. And then, kind of cascading into all of these other issues at quarterback. It's a tough deal. It's a tough hand. And look, I don't think you're doing this either. I want to be very clear because there are a lot of people that are really upset right now, Colts fans, about this collapse. I'm not trying to make excuses for the organization, okay? Injuries are part of the game. Like, bad luck is part of this as well. Bad luck is an excuse. It's just a reality. Like, all teams deal with luck and bad luck. I mean, look at the Chiefs in close games the last couple of years compared to this year, right? Like, that stuff sometimes even hard corrects in the span of a year. And people don't, people like to look at sports and say, well, everything is skill and everything is planning. You have to prepare for everything. And sometimes just bad, stupid, terrible, luck-related stuff happens. And that's a lot of what has happened to the Colts this year. They have some things that they need to wear, like not addressing the linebacker position properly. And if you want to go after them for the Sauce Gardner trade, be my guest. That was a heavy, heavy capital, 2 first-rounders and then a lottery ticket wide receiver to trade for him. That was a heavy, heavy price for them to have to pay. But this injury stuff and some of this other stuff, it's just there's no way to prepare for not having your top 3 quarterbacks. There's just none.
Yeah, no, I think you put a perfect bow on that. It's not an excuse when it comes to injuries because there are other reasons why this team has fallen the way they have recently, but it's a big factor here. Your top 3 defenders, your top 3 quarterbacks, other missed games. I mean, gosh, the Justin Wally injury looms so large this season. Some offensive line injuries now popping up. Receivers have missed some time. Like, it is what it is. Like, injuries happen to all teams, but the Colts have been hit very hard this year.
Alec Pierce has been nicked up, and he's had a great season, right? But he's dealt with stuff.
Right. And yeah, it's not an excuse, but it's part of the game. But it's an unfortunate part that's hit the Colts really hard this year. But coming up, we're going to talk about kind of this overall vibe shift. I think you guys can tell from our first segment here where we were on top of the world just a month ago, and now it feels like the sky is falling, and some of us are hitting it with nihilism. Other people are hitting it with cautious optimism. Like, it's just a very different vibe here in Indianapolis. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. You guys know there's no reason to let big wireless drain your wallet, especially during the holidays. Right now, Mint Mobile is running their best deal of the entire year. All their unlimited plans are 50% off. That means you can lock in 3, 6, or even 12 months of unlimited premium wireless for just $15 a month. It's the easiest way to take your overpriced phone bill and give it the full Scrooge treatment. And what makes this even better is how simple Mint makes the switch. No contracts, no nonsense, just real savings with real quality service. Turn your expensive wireless present into a huge wireless savings future by switching to Mint. Shop Mint Unlimited plans at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Limited time offer only. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for a 12-month plan. Required $15 a month equivalent. Taxes and fees, initial plan term only. Over 35 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. Alrighty, Locked On Colts Everydayers. I'm joined, of course, by Derek Schultz of multiple fame. Indie Business Journal fame, Schultz and Query fame, Colts Squad Show fame, obviously the biggest one there, alongside Alan Pinkett and myself, and Jake Arthur. We do some great stuff over there if you guys haven't checked it. But we are back talking about this Colts season. If you guys are a big fan of the Colts Squad Show that we do twice a week, Derek and I and Jake and Alan, we've all been talking about how awesome this season has been for most of the year. And we were not praising the Sauce Gardner trade, but more so being like, we appreciate going all in for it with this window. It looks like the Colts have their quarterback of at least the near future, like Daniel Jones for the next couple years could really like run this thing with Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard. Heck, speaking of Shane Steichen, Steichen was the coach of the year in the NFL for the first 9 weeks of the season. But man, it has really shifted so much. I mean, I think the first thing is just this injury to Daniel Jones. If this was any other injury, I say give him an extension, come back next season, run this thing back with everybody and just see what you can do. You know, like if your quarterback goes down with season-ending injury, it's hard to recover, and maybe you can find some magic again next year. But with it being an Achilles injury to his right leg, to the one that generates power as a quarterback, it just throws the future of this whole thing into the dark because I mean, look, we've said on this show for years, the one thing I've been very consistent about for years, guys, and you guys know this if you listen to the show regularly, I don't mess with Achilles injuries. Jake and I were saying all offseason, don't bring back Samson Ebukam. We were saying, you know, when Dio Dangbo was drafted, I was nervous about that because of the Achilles injury. Achilles injury is just a brutal, brutal injury, man. And it hits every athlete so hard, whether you're a quarterback, whether you're a running back, whether you play a different sport. It is the worst injury in sports right now. So with this being an Achilles injury, it makes the future so much bleaker, and especially in the context of the Sauce Gardner trade for 2 first-round picks. So next year they can't tank or anything; they don't have a first-round pick. I think that's the biggest thing that changed the vibes here at Indy is like, if this were any other injury, it's one thing, but now the future just feels so up in the air because this is such a massive injury to a quarterback who looked like the guy who'd be the answer for the next couple seasons.
Yeah, I mean, even if you bring him back on some sort of team-friendly incentive-laden deal, there's no telling if he's going to be ready for week 1 or week 3 or week 5, right? And at that point, you need a contingency plan. So, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's every bit as damaging as really any injury that I can think of going back to Andrew Luck. I mean, and that's, I mean, when you talk about disaster level injuries in this town, that you're talking that and Peyton's neck, right? I mean, those are the two that really kind of stand out. And I think it's in that category just because of what this season could potentially have been. And I understand that there were some cracks in the foundation here the last couple of weeks, even when Jones was out there and on the field, and they probably lose that game in Jacksonville, even if he plays, right? So fully understanding that it's still a devastating injury. And I don't know, Zach, I mean, you go back to the veteran carousel and you take another spin there. I mean, the Colts have taken a lot of spins on that vet wheel and have had a lot of varying results. I think I'd argue that the best player, at least as far as peak performance was concerned, was clearly Jones. I don't think that it's necessarily even close. And then the consistency performance, I think Rivers, because he did it over the course of the entire season, right? And you had kind of a baseline for Rivers. I think he struggled in one of those games like Chicago and Cleveland. He had some early season games, but for the most part, he had a very good 2020 season with a much worse talent group around him as far as pass catchers were concerned that year. So I don't envy the Colts for finding who that replacement is going to be. I am curious as to who the person deciding who that quarterback is going to be will be. I have long ago decided to stop speaking in absolutes about Chris Ballard's status because we've written his obituary 3 or 4 times already in this town. But at some point, we will reach the conclusion that, hey, there needs to be a change there. And even if it's bad luck, and even if the process is good, the results have not materialized. And in the NFL, it's a results business, and it should not take a decade to produce a tangible result. And that's kind of where the Colts sit right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. I completely agree. And heck, this is probably a conversation for more later in the season or maybe in the off season. But one thing that scares you the most if Chris Ballard comes back is he usually doesn't care about Achilles injuries. He has shown that constantly in his time as a general manager. So I saw Jeremy Fowler putting a report out there that maybe the tag is on the table for Daniel Jones for the Colts. That's like $46 million for a quarterback.
That's a lot.
Who won't really play.
No.
If he does play next season, even if he starts week 1 next season, what's the mobility going to look like? What's the overall explosiveness going to look like? I mean, guys, I know this is a different position, but think of all the Achilles injured players that the Colts have tried out there. Look at Samson Ebukam this year. Look at Dallas Flowers after his injury. Look at Marlon Mack never played again after his. And he was 27, 28 years old, never played again after he was a year removed away from 1,000-yard season, never played again after his. Like, it's just such a brutal injury. And one more thing I wanted to pick your mind on, Derek, before we get into our final segment of the show is, again, just the overall vibe shift. 7-1. They make the trade at 7-2 for Sauce Gardner. We're on top of the world, feeling good. Down the stretch, it's like, hey, we're playing good teams, but we're a good team. We're going to be good out here. Now with the Jones injury, with the Sauce injury, with Buckner being hurt, with Mooney now being out for the year, you kind of said in the first segment there that, like, bringing Rivers in, it's more so just like this, like, I don't even want to say it's like this apathetic kind of like, we'll see, but it's more so like, at least it's a fun. It's like watching the WWE, I guess, at this point.
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah. What else could go wrong?
You know, so like just your overall mindset, I guess. In the last like 72 hours, I suppose, from watching Jones go down to now Rivers coming in here, like what are you thinking with all this?
Man, it's just it's always a circus a little bit, and some of that has been self-imposed. Like, obviously, if you're going to name an ESPN analyst your interim head coach, then you get whatever, the clowns and the monkeys and the elephants and the trapeze artists. Like, you deserve that because you're erecting the tent for yourself with it being a circus. But in this case, obviously, the Colts didn't ask for this type of injury, and they're just trying to do their best to kind of salvage what's going on here. But you talk about the tone shift, and what's interesting here in this town is that fans have tasted some winning here with what the Pacers did last year. And I know they're going through some things right now as far as the injury is concerned, but IU football, Purdue men's basketball is a contender right now. So, for a long time when the Colts were struggling, everybody else kind of sucked too. So it's kind of like, okay, yeah, this sucks, but so does this. And I think that kind of it increases the frustration for folks because they were teased by that 7-1, 8-2 start and those ridiculous efficiency numbers that the Shane Steichen offense was putting out there in the first 8 weeks of the season. And now to just kind of see it all come crashing down. As much as this appears to be sudden, this will ultimately end up being a much slower burn than the 2021 collapse, because that was literally 2 games. I mean, it was 2 weeks. All the Colts had to do was split. You guys know they ended up not splitting, and they lose to Jacksonville in hilarious fashion, at least in the macabre way. And now, this is tough. I mean, because we're going to have to watch this for the next 4 weeks with probably a 44-year-old quarterback and probably down all these great defensive players against Seattle. Might be the best team in the league right now. No one's talking about San Francisco. San Francisco has been very good. And you guys see how good Houston and Jacksonville have played in the last couple of weeks. So it could get, as ugly as it is right now, it could get a lot worse. And that's kind of what I'm, kind of gritting my teeth and concerned about here moving forward with them.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think you bring up a lot of beautiful allusions to the past things that we have dealt with. I don't want to call it just like the Chris Ballard era, because I don't think all of it's his fault, but it's under his guidance, I guess, with the team.
Yeah.
All this like circus stuff we've seen. So to close off today's show, Derek and I, as people who have covered this team for a while, are going to talk about just, are the Colts cursed? Am I the problem? We're going to talk about that in the final segment to close off today's show. But first, NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything just feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, and every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a big turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into that moment right then and there. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up, and you can even bet on the next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and much more. It keeps you locked into every single snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, Locked On Colts everydayers, we are back just talking about the Indianapolis Colts, the major tonal shifts, the injuries, and now I guess we got to even go further back, Derek, because you've been covering this team a long, long time. How long have you been covering this team officially, Derek?
So I was a credentialed media member from 2007 through 19, but I've sort of covered them in some capacity since the '05 season would have been my first one.
See, it's definitely not Derek's fault then. He stopped in 2019, and that's when it all started to fall apart. Because 2019 is when I truly consider that this like curse over Indy has started. They've made one playoffs since 2019, and you guys know what the biggest story was that year was a surprise retirement of Andrew Luck. That one week before the season, and it's kind of been a trickle effect on everything. And just to talk about just some of the major events that have happened since 2019 with this team. Obviously, the Andrew Luck retirement is one of the most shocking moments, I guess, in pro sports since then, right? Like, how often do you see, he wasn't even 30 years old, I believe, at that point. He was like 29 years old or just turned 30. Quarterback of that's still in his prime, just walking away from the game. And it was very unexpected. He was still he was coming off a year where he was like a top 5 to 7 quarterback in the league, done for his career right then and there. Then we fast forward a couple years, the Jeff Saturday debacle that Derek was alluding to in the last segment, hiring an ESPN analyst that was no way qualified to be in that role, to be their head coach for the second half of that year. Within that stretch, what happened? The Colts gave up the biggest blown lead in the history of the sport that still stands today. It's been a couple years. That still stands. The Colts versus Minnesota Vikings, and I think it was a primetime game. And now they're bringing in a 44-year-old quarterback who's been retired for 5 years to be their guy the rest of the year here. So when I say that this Phillip Rivers signing doesn't feel like that big of a deal here with the Colts, it's because it's like not even like a top 3 or 4 story, I guess, for the Colts since I've covered the team. And I think that's just saying something about just whatever is going on with this organization, if it's a curse over them, if it's just the way management is or bad luck or whatever you want to say it is, Derek, it's just, it feels like since like that 2019 decision that there's been this dark cloud over Indianapolis.
Yeah, like even stupid stuff, Zach, like throwing a 6th-round pick at Isaiah Rodgers and then having him grow into a player that they liked, and then he has this gambling suspension and you have to let him go, and then you look around now and he's exploding, right? And it's just, it's like, come on, like how is that possible? Like, how could that happen? Sports curses and things like that, like I'll leave that up to fans to determine what is a curse. The basketball gods, the football gods, the baseball gods. I think sometimes just random, weird, stupid stuff happens in sports, and that's part of what we kind of like, because sometimes that can break your way. Right. But you're right that it just feels like whenever things have been aligned, and as a Colts fan, you felt like, okay, we're ready. Now is the time. Like, things are moving in the right direction. The other shoe drops. Like in like you mentioned with 2019 coming off that 2018 season, like you were thinking, okay, Leonard and Nelson and Luck and like we're going, we're moving. Luck's healthy again, and we got Frank Reich at the time. People were on board with him as well. We got the head coach for this, and then that night in August happens in the preseason game, and then that all goes to hell. And then in even in 21, I mean, I think at the point of the season, even though Wentz started to show, particularly in the Patriots game when they were scared to death to throw the football, that things weren't going that well, you still thought to yourself, well, they're going to be in the playoffs, and that's great. And back-to-back years in the playoffs, and what that could have meant before it all kind of came crashing down. I thought in 2023, even though they lost a win-in game against the Texans, I thought they showed a lot of progress in Shane Steichen's first year, and I thought Richardson flashed. I was really excited going into last year, and then last year, God, was just it was awful watching them, and throwing a parade over rallying against the Patriots, who dominated them the entire game. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just didn't feel right. And then this year, you felt, okay, they've unlocked Jones. They got him away from one of the worst organizations in pro sports. And he's a football nerd and a mastermind, just like Steichen, and they're aligned, and we've got the pieces and all of that. And then it all kind of turns to ash again. I think this honestly dates back to, you mentioned the Chris Ballard era. I think this started with the fake punt call in 2015 in the Sunday Night Football game against the Patriots. Like, ever since then.
That's true.
Ever since then, things have not only gone poorly, they've gone hilariously poorly for the Colts over the last 10 years. And it's a bummer. I mean, it sucks to think that if this team falls out, which I think they're going to ultimately do, they're in 3rd place now, for God's sake, that we'll be talking about a team that not only just won one playoff game, they only made the playoffs twice in the span of 11 seasons. And that is unthinkable, considering when I first started on the beat to where the Colts were. Not that, rolling out of bed and winning the division every year, winning 12, 13, 14 games and Star Wars numbers and all of that, man, that's a lot better than what the current reality is.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think the big question here, Derek, is like, I'm glad that you put it back on 2015, so it's not fully on me. But some people were saying it's my fault, Derek. Do you think it's my fault? It's a fake punt completely. But yeah, no, it's just crazy though. And part of it here, and this is like the more serious question here, is like, it's not all Chris Ballard's fault, right? Because you can't. I mean, he didn't hire Jeff Saturday. I know he was kind of pushed aside to have Jeff Saturday hired, but he didn't hire Jeff Saturday. Even with like he didn't tell Andrew Luck to retire. I mean, we all agree a lot of that was the injuries that came from either him away from football or also from during the Ryan Grigson era. And heck, even this signing with Phillip Rivers, like what else could they possibly do? But like there is one common denominator for a lot of this, and it's been under his management essentially. And I kind of view it like when a CEO of a company that's like kind of going under, and it's like a lot of outside forces are the reason why the company's going under. So maybe it's not completely the CEO's fault, but like you still have to make that move eventually, So it's like, how many more of these things we have to see under Chris Ballard, I guess, Derek, is like, and I know he's kind of immortal at this point. He can never die, but like, it just feels like how much of this like circus, because like, even when Indy's bad, man, we're just like a circus all the time here right now.
Yeah, and does it just need a hard reset overall? And
right.
And as good as Jonathan Taylor is, and as good as Quentin Nelson is, and as good as Michael Pittman Jr. is, and as good as Kenny Moore is, and I like all those guys not only as football players but as people, at least from what they've shown us. They haven't won, right? They haven't won, and that's it's a harsh thing to say. And obviously there's context that's involved with all that, including the quarterback situation. Some of that, that's not Kenny Moore's fault that they can't figure out at quarterback. But, at some point, instead of just running it back every year and just being like, okay, we're fine, we just need a little luck. Okay, we're fine, we just need a little luck. At some point, you just have to decide to just kind of start over again, start back to the drawing board. And I don't actually think they're positioned to do that until after the 26th season. So they look a little bit stuck to me right now. But you're right. I mean, the ultimate result, the ultimate thing for a general manager is to produce results. And while we could talk about Ryan Grigson's process being bad, there were some results that came from that. I think Ballard's process has largely been good. Some people will disagree with that because there are these Ballard absolutists that think he's the worst person to ever run an NFL team. And I don't think that at all. But the results just haven't been there. And you have to be able to produce a result. And I'm frankly tired of Houston and Jacksonville and those teams dominating this division. I'm super tired of it. And again, that's, they're coming up, Colts are going down, and it's the same song and dance as it's been the last couple of years.
Yep. Colts are staring down the barrel of, I believe this is going to be the second time in the Ballard tenure where they have a 5% chance plus of making the playoffs and ultimately missing. I mean, I don't know what the exact numbers were on that 2021 season. I can't imagine it was below 95. It might be up to like 99 because they played two bad teams. I think both of them at home to close out that season.
I remember 97. That was the number that I remember in my head. 97%.
Yeah, this one had to have been around 99 when they were 8-2, 7-1. So just two massive collapses in his tenure. And yeah, again, there's extenuating circumstances. Of course, if you're down to your fourth quarterback, you're going to blow a playoff lead. But still, it's in the big picture of everything that's happened in the Chris Ballard era, it's just another notch on there, I guess. So yeah, I don't know what it is with this Colts team. You guys can let us know in the comment section if you think it's a curse, if you think it's all Chris Ballard, if you think just bad luck, like whatever you ultimately think it is, let us know in the comment section, because I've only seen Indianapolis sports like this in my time covering this team. I don't know anything different than this, which is just this crazy atmosphere with it all. But maybe one day the Colts can turn it around. I'll be with you guys, I'm sure, throughout all of that. Derek will too. But we do want to thank you guys, though, for making Locked On Colts your first listen today and every single day. The NFL season's in full swing, so for your next listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler the Madman Rowland gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or listen to your podcast. And if you guys don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, at Zach Hicks 2, and at Schultz975 as well. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube or listen to your podcast. We love you guys' ratings and reviews. And if you guys are liking what you're hearing from me and Derek right now, we'll be back with you guys later tonight on the Colts Squad Show, also joined by Alan Pinkett on there. So make sure you're checking that out later tonight